But the Algerian clubs, I think, look, because my lack of knowledge, I didn't give them much attention, but they do deserve a lot of attention because of what happened in this current window. Basically, like you said, Al Masry on a smaller scale of pyramids. What is happening in Algerian football right now is a smaller scale of the Saudi Pro League. I don't know if you're aware. No, I'm serious. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I kid you not. So basically, there's been a drive of corporate investment into Algerian football, um, where they have been tasked to get the best players on the continent, right? So they can go to South Africa, they can go to Namibia, they can go to Angola, and they can sign these players, and they'll get the budgets for these signings, as long as the player is under the age of 30 and they've got international caps. So I think it's a bit of an interesting one where we'll see maybe, better players coming in. I think the salaries have skyrocketed in Algeria, but also increased expectation because it's all in all giving, people and clubs money, but are they doing the right things with it? And I think in your analysis background, you've noticed that big money doesn't translate into
Yeah.
big success. You know what I
They've always
mean?
been one of those countries where they're good at producing the young players from the
Mm,
league and then going
mm.
to countries like France or Belgium, which is impressive, but we rarely see too much of high performances in the continental competitions. But we can get into it right now if you'd like, talking about some of the big signings they've made. And I think some of them
Mm,
don't fit that criteria, which you listed of being under 30. But I think the big
mm.
one, Andy Deloy, 32 years
No,
old.
but the foreigners,
Okay. So we can
they can
start.
obviously sign, whoever they want, in terms
Yeah.
of, but the allocated budget, the big spending it has those requirements. I'm not sure if the PIC have similar rules in Saudi, that you can't just spend 100 M on, I don't know, Zizo from Zamalek or something. You know what I mean?
It's been interesting to see. It could be, the Saudi project. It could be, like you said, a smaller scale for some of the big countries on the African stage. Perhaps
Mm,
looking at the mistakes they made and trying to see where they can do better. I
yeah.
don't know if the likes of Kanisa Mayo and Andy Delort are replicating Ronaldo and Sadio Mane, but it is interesting.
Yeah, look, I mean, Mayo is one that's interesting for. I think it kind of actually went under the radar because it happened like I heard about it on Friday, and then he was a CRB player on the Sunday. Like boom, boom. Here's the money. He's in Turkey, or I can't remember. Yeah, they're in Turkey for preseason or whatever. And he's literally their record transfer in Algerian football history, and nobody's talking about it because Andy Delort came back and
Yeah.
Slimani came, and you know what I mean. So it went kind of under the radar, but he's gonna have to deliver so that this type of transfers continue from south to north.
$750,000. Do you think that's too
I
much
think it
money
was
for
more
him?
around. I think it was more around 850.
Ah, okay.
The very accurate. Maybe there's add-ons or something, but look, he had about a 1 million euro price tag somewhere around there for a while. So he was the top scorer of Cape Town City for a couple of seasons. He won the Golden Boot once, if not twice. So he's been battling it out with Peter Shalulile. Um, Look, there was some interest from Sundowns here, but not too serious. There was some serious interest from Chiefs, but they acted too slowly before CRB came around. But it's a funny one because CRB was actually off I can't even remember. The guy's name escapes me, but he was a target man, and they didn't get him. Who was it? It was Mabasa, I think. It was Mabasa
Hmm.
from Orlando Pirates, who won the Golden Boot here in South Africa. They didn't get him, and they went for Mayo. He's a completely different player. He's more of an inside forward. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's going to be a difficult one because in North Africa, your Morocco's, your Algeria, the skillful players from out there don't really like set the scene on fire
Yeah.
traditionally. It's usually those big target men, the robust, old-fashioned number nines that
Yeah,
that that
yeah.
score. I'm just in the Gulf, it's the same, eh? Like your Ulungas, your those type of guys,
Yeah.
1.9 meters dominant in the air and things like that. So
It's
yeah, it'll
funny,
be
they try
interesting.
and play structured football, but at the end of the day, it just comes out to crossing. So,
Exactly. But I mean, Slimani is there. Maybe
yeah,
he can
that
start
would be an
a part.
interesting partnership. Slimani and Mayo,
Yeah. And
you
they've
have
got
European
Mayus as
pedigree,
well.
African pedigree.
Ayman Mayus also joined them. He was one of the stars of the Chan, and then he went to Switzerland from USM Algeria. They won the title as well, the Confederations Cup title. So yeah, he's back on loan. So they've got quite a decent amount of options there, but it's about, getting them to play together now.
Should be exciting.
Mm,
So that is Algeria. What we try and we hope to do in the show is, cover some of the big leagues in the African football. They usually don't get a lot of attention, Algeria being one of them. And so with this
mm,
transfer window, there was a lot of interesting moves, especially across North Africa. We think we could go next to Morocco. So Lorenz, you mentioned earlier some of the sales they've made there. So one thing we
yeah.
highlighted in the lead up to this, the league in total, they sold two strikers, Hamza Igman and El Mahdi Maboub, to from FAR Rabat and Raja Casablanca, respectively, to Rangers and Dinamo Moscow for a combined
Mm.
4 million, so around 2 million each. I can tell you from a data perspective, those two guys were very interesting and had a lot of attention from other clubs. So it is interesting to see where they've landed. I know Igman is doing quite well in Rangers so far. I can't
I
speak about
haven't
Dinamo
really followed
Moscow.
him, but I watch Asfar a lot, quite a lot, because Nasruddin Nabi, obviously from younger, went to Asfar, and he was linked with Chiefs, which is like the most supported club in the country. So you obviously had your eye on him when he went to Asfar to see, is this dude the real deal? Can he do what he did at younger that he did at can he do at Asfar what he did at younger? And that Ikhman guy really caught my eye. Like, you could see like this dude was destined
Yeah,
for a higher level. Morocco is producing this quite frequently now, and I think it's obviously all the investment that they're doing in the academy systems. I think what's the Mohammed Five Academy,
yeah,
and Asfar has a good youth academy. Fus Rabat has a good youth academy. Raja and Wydad, obviously the players haven't been coming through that often because they're big spenders. But for the better part of it, they've been, developing some really decent talent. I mean, you look around in Europe and you expect, oh, all of them are going to be, oh, I was born in Madrid, or like the
yeah,
Hakimis and
yeah,
Tia. But often you'll go to their, and Algeria as well, to their credit, you'll go and it's like, oh, this dude actually started their career in their own domestic league, and it's quite impressive to see how often that's happening now. But
yeah.
yeah,
You
Ikhman
mentioned
and
the Muhammad Academy. They also sold
yeah,
Abdulhamid Aid Boudlal, a very impressive young center back, to Stade Rennes for seven-figure fee. So this
yeah.
shows, teams in Europe are taking the Moroccan league seriously, even,
I'm
players who
not
are under 20 years old, which is very good. So those were some of the departures from the league, but we do have a section slot out for Wydad and some of the acquisitions they've made. This is very interesting. The supplies, this hits almost every market. They've signed former AC Milan and Senegal striker Mbaye Niang from Empoli. They signed two teenagers from Brazil, from Fluminense and Corinthians, for
yeah,
over combined almost $2 million. Nassim Chadli from Le Havre in Ligue 1. And then for the South Africans, of course, there's something for them. They made the loan
mm,
signing of Cassius Mailula from Toronto FC. And also,
yeah.
this is a big one for you. I'm sure this will be very impactful on the continental market. Abdulmunim Boutel from Sundowns, returning to North Africa. Where do you want to start? I think perhaps how will this impact Sundowns, or how will this impact South African football?
Look, I think the first thing that he didn't even mention is that they took the head coach as well, Rulani Mokoena, who, who honestly is become super popular on the continent, not just because he's outspoken and they call him like a Pep Guardiola of Africa, but because his football was doing the talking. Like, Sundowns played some epic football in the Champions League under him. Like, no, they didn't win it, but he won plaudits all across the continent because the style of play that they were implementing was like nothing we've seen in Africa before. A mix of the Zerbi and Arteta, and like progressive counter pressing, playing midfield diamonds, passing getting to 1,000 passes in the Champions League, in a football that we traditionally just see players just rolling over the field, kicking the ball out for free kicks, corners, just terrible football. He went to North Africa, I think, was against Wydad or against 10 men, and they outplayed him. Belouizdad hit him 5-0. So he's been a massive acquisition, and I think it's a surprising one that he actually went there because everybody thought, Wydad's in a state of disarray, FIFA ban, unpaid, players in the past. And then all of a sudden they signed 25 players and get Rulani Mukwena. So it's crazy because I mean their long-serving president, not Fauzi, what's his name? Saeed Nasiri,
Mm.
also went to jail. He was caught up in allegations or not allegations, he's in jail for uh, drug trafficking with Colombians, and it's like a movie, bro. Like it's just crazy. So yeah, the signing's quite
It's the
interesting.
price of success for continental glory. It's what you need to
Yeah,
do.
100%. But it's an interesting one because they're not in the Champions League, they're not in the Confederations Cup, they are in the Club World Cup and potentially the AFL. Details still a bit sketchy there. But yeah, 25, 26 players out, 22, 23 players in. It's quite a overall. Um, and judging by the starting 11s that he's picked, he's still trying to find who's his best 11. But it is interesting because the type of signings, like signing these young kids from Brazil, speaks to his confidence in saying that, like, I'm gonna be here for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he wouldn't sign otherwise 19, 20-year olds without them also having the belief that this coach might be here for a while.
And then Butel, I was really surprised. I was surprised in the first place when he came to South Africa. Then I was surprised when he was probably the best center back on the continent for
Mm.
Sundowns in the Champions League. And now he's back in Morocco. What do you think of this
Yeah,
move?
it's a look. I don't think Sundowns are losing too much sleep about losing him, because they needed to open up some foreign spots for a 3 million euro
We'll
addition
get into
from
that.
from Lommel. But yeah, I don't think they were losing too much sleep. The player himself, he arrived a little bit he was injured, a little bit overweight for preseason, and didn't really look like he had any desire to, crack on at Sundowns for the season, and they knew that immediately. I think he was a bit upset that Rulani Mukwena also left, going to Wydad, and if you can look online, you can Google him. He's had previous cases of homesickness, so I think that maybe played into its part where he went to the club and he said, I want to go back to Morocco. Where even his agent was saying, dude, what do you mean? Like, stay here. You're earning good money. Like, you're playing. Like, you're doing well. He went back to Morocco. So look, Sundowns, yeah, they've signed his replacement. Um, Maybe not a left centre back, but he was playing predominantly as an inverted fullback at times, as a left inverted fullback, and like a hybrid centre back defensive midfielder at times under Mokoena. So, look, I think he just wanted to be back with Rulani, and the fact that he was able to go back to Morocco as well is like killing two birds with one stone. He just needs to get back into shape, obviously, and then we'll see where that takes him.
Okay, hopefully that was more than enough for Morocco. I don't know if there's ever been this level of coverage from English speakers on the league before, but some of that could be because of the South African influence. But
Yeah,
next, we'll move on to Egypt. There are two big stories. First, we call it a bit of a center back carousel at Al Ahly. They sold
yeah.
Mohamed Abdul Menam, uh, arguably the best center back on the continent, both with Al Ahly, but also with the national team and the
And
performances
you're
he
not
showed.
being biased. You're not
I'm
just
not.
to put it out there. You're not being biased. Like this guy's Egyptian, but honestly, I think the first time I saw him was in AFCON in Cameroon. He came out of nowhere. He was playing for Modern Future, whatever the
Yeah,
club's name is.
he's a
Pizza,
warrior.
Pizza brought him back after that AFCON in, and I actually remember speaking to him, and he's like, "This guy is how was he on loan? Like this guy's crazy good. You know what I mean?" So it wasn't surprising to see him move on to Europe now.
Yeah, so he's moved to Nice, 4 million transfer fee apparently. He's had a bit of a mixed start. There were some visa issues, and then he lost his place in the starting lineup. But they have a very interesting team there. I've been keeping up with the lineups that they produced to see if he's appearing. It should be interesting. But then Al Ahly replaced him with the Moroccan international Ashraf Dari from Ligan for 2 million. So they've made 2 million, and they've got a Ligan quality center back.
Obviously, Al Ahly also, previous transfers is something that we don't want to touch on now, but Atiat Allah coming in as well. He was one of the stars of the semi-final run, Morocco semi-final run. Also a Champions League winner with Wydad. Crazy pedigree. He's in the peak of his career. And obviously he's coming in now they signed him from Sochi in Russia. He
Yeah.
had just a couple, maybe a season there after leaving Wydad. But he's obviously coming in as a long-term replacement for Ali Malul, and basically the same player. Excellent technical ability. It's actually just scary. Like they can just go and get Dari Abdel. I mean, Yat Atiat Allah. I think they also tried to sign the Tunisian, the Esperance's former captain from Ferencvaros. I don't know if they did sign.
Ben Ramdan. Yeah, yeah. It was a
Yeah,
close link, but it didn't happen. It's really interesting with them because it seems like they can sign the best players from the Northern African countries who aren't good enough for Europe, and then maybe not at the caliber to go to Saudi Arabia. And it seems Ahly has filled that gap where they can just take these players who have World Cup experience, or CAF Champions League winners who've played in top five European leagues. And so it seems like they're building a bit of a powerhouse, but as we know, it never goes that smoothly. We have one more story to cover in North Africa. Libya is not a country that gets a lot of attention from the press, but they made a very interesting transfer with the signing of Mabululu from Al Ittihad Alexandria onto Al Ahly Tripoli now. 1.2 million transfer fee, which I believe is a record for Libya, and he's on 200K US dollars a year. This is very interesting. He's become something of a cult hero recently. I'm very excited to see what he does.
and yeah, I mean Mabululu, obviously, he's always been quite popular because of his name. I think in many local dialects, he's got a strange name. I know in South Africa, whenever I mention his name, they start going crazy. I don't know exactly maybe the people in the comments would know, but yeah, not just his name that's strange, but he's got, the whole Gomis celebration, and like, he did really well at AFCON though. Like he scored tons of goals. They got to the quarterfinals, I think, of the AFCON. And he's been a serial goal scorer in Egypt. I think maybe over 40, close to 50 goals for Al Ittihad in the 2 or 3 seasons that he was there. So quite a player. And yeah, I've gotten quite close to a couple of agents in North Africa who always tell me that the Libyan market is, there's never complaints about payments. They've got tons of cash. So yeah, I mean, who blames the guy 32 to get a big payday before, he retires, or you know what I mean? So yeah, it'll be interesting one, but it's unfortunate that they got knocked out of the Confederations Cup by Simba. But yeah, Libyan teams always very strange. Like good players on paper, they can compete with anyone in Africa in terms of salaries and things like that, but don't really in the modern times translate into much success in the interclub competitions.
Okay, so now on to our final sections. We want to talk about transfers that went under the radar on the continent. And this was Barcelona signing two Ghanaian youngsters, Aziz Issa and David Oduro, both 18 years old, a right winger and a left back. To be fair, they're going to Barca's second team, who are playing in the third or fourth tier of Spanish football. But I think this is a massive move that's gone under the radar because the fact that a club like Barcelona are scouting the Ghanaian Premier League, I think that should be a real incentive for both fans, but also teams to, pay attention and invest in the young players that are coming through.
Yeah, when I saw those two signings, like I just assume it's probably right to dream or whatever. And then like I actually Googled him and looked quite deeper, and I saw the winger. I don't know what his name is now, but
Issa.
he actually played in the Confederations Cup. Yeah, for Dreams FC, and he was a regular performer at 17, 16, 18. Now, when you look at that, that's quite impressive for
Yeah.
a player to be in the professional ranks, a teenager. almost 50 first team games, senior football. And then going to Barcelona B, I mean, look, I mean, even if he doesn't make it at Barcelona, the education, the development that he's going to get for whatever amount of time, I mean, he can only fail forward from Barcelona. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if he goes to Swedish, the Danish league or wherever, he's going to have a decent career.
Yeah, and Barcelona aren't one of those clubs who will sign someone just because they saw a YouTube video. They've surely done
100%.
a lot of research on him. I know his data looked very good in the Ghanaian league. But Adore is an interesting one for me, more so because of the club he came from, Accra Lions. They had I think they were the youngest team in the league, top of the league for a good amount of time. And they have so many players like him who are raring for move to Europe. I know some of them have moved to leagues like Kuwait, but also some have gone to Serbia.
Mm.
So I think that club is especially there's a lot of talent there that's just essentially waiting for the clubs in Europe to pick them up. But yeah, Barcelona is a big headline.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And just maybe you might know a bit more of this, but like, what is it about these leagues that are maybe not as professional as your Egypts and your South Africas and Morocco and Tunisia? Like, maybe not Tunisia, but like, what is it about these countries that are producing these ridiculous talents? Is it the fact that they can't pay them well, or
I think we've talked about this a lot in over the years, but infrastructure is definitely a big one. They don't have the resources
but how do
available at the
how do
clubs.
they develop? How do they develop them? Just natural talent, like.
I think so. So in the case of Nigeria, a lot of the best players that go to Europe, they're not playing for the likes of Enyimba, or else they'd be doing better in the CAF
Yeah.
competitions. But they play in the local clubs, their local tournaments, even street football, and then they're able to make their move to Europe, whether it's through trial or usually through trial or even moving there themselves. And Ghana is a similar
Mm,
case. So when you see a player 18, that's obviously the youngest age they can get them at. But past 19, it's very rare that they'll get a chance to move to Europe because they know that the development and the training and the level of education they're getting in countries like Ghana or Senegal or Mali or Nigeria is not great. But if they see enough talent there, they know that there's a good base level to work with, usually physically, and then also having the technical capability to be a difference maker where they're playing. And then from there,
mm,
it's up to the European club to develop it. But it's a gold mine for talent. The best African
mm.
players in the world over the past 20, 30 years have come from these countries that don't have good leagues. And they've never really been good leagues. So yeah, I would say talent, lack of infrastructure. It's an interesting one. But it's a question that it's an easy answer, but there's no good way to fix it really.
The big problem many club sporting directors agents has been raging about is that our league cut off uh Y Scout.
Yeah, exactly. So having access to it for a European club, because every club in the world has a Scout subscription, so they're able to see video, but also data on that league and
Mm,
those players. So someone like me who's not watching Ghanaian league, when I go through the data, these players like Issa or Oduro, they pop up, and then teams from there or in Europe are able to, at least have a chance at looking at them. There was one famous
mm,
example of Burundi. They were on Scout for 1 year. I think it was maybe 8 years ago. And then the player Indiashime moved to Turkey. It was a very risky transfer. And then he moved from Turkey to Nice, I believe, for 20 million. And that was just
funny
because
funny is
they were
that
on Scout.
my mate from Cape Town is actually his agent.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's so random that you mentioned this player now. Because I remember he was telling me about I'm scouting in Burundi and Sierra Leone and I'm finding these gems. And I was like, dude, sure, dude, like whatever. And he took him to some random club in Turkey and then he got him a big move to what Başakşehir or whatever I
Yeah.
don't know if he's in there. And then all of a sudden I was like, this dude is holding a niece. I went on
Yeah,
his
yeah.
IG and it's like,
And a
I was
huge
like, what?
transfer fee as well.
It was 15 million euro or something.
Yeah, it's incredible. But that really shows why the leagues in Africa should invest in both getting quality video coverage and then, if possible, data relationship, whether
But
it
you
be
said this
Scout.
ending. But you said it's ending. What is ending?
So they've stopped, they're not covering the new season for Ghana. So they just had this past year. And it's similar with Algeria. So
You
it's very,
understand why? Like, do Y Scout have to go to Ghana and then
yeah,
like strike a deal? Oh,
exactly.
okay.
So
Oh,
it's something usually that it requires, money for Wisecout to pay up, but also Ghana has to have their end of the deal with TV broadcasts and all of that. So if they're not able to keep that up, they won't get the money.
so
So
you can
it's
obviously understand why it's an issue in South Africa where the TV rights is massive here.
so what do you think was the issue with that? Was South Africa asking for too much money?
I generally think it is one of those reasons where they price them out of it. And
It's
that's
really
the funny
sad.
thing, because we were on Y Scout for many years. Well, actually, I don't know, but I just know we were on Y Scout, and the agents and like the scouts and sporting directors are complaining because I mean, there's no real budget. Like you work for a European club, like it's not as simple as saying, "Oh, here's a player that's talented. We're gonna fly down to South Africa for the next month to scout him."
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't happen.
So having that easy video footage, it can make a world of a difference for the clubs, but also the players because it gives them a platform to shine on. But that is something we'll keep an eye on, and I think this is a really interesting insight that hopefully you guys can get from not many other places because you have the journalists, you have people working in clubs who can give you this perspective, but we see it in real time, and then over the course of a few years, how it can change a player's career. So
Hmm.
that's something.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, if we had access to Y Scout, all the players I've told you over the years, hey, look at this one, look at this one, you probably would have had a better idea of who they actually are. Because I mean, I think it was maybe 3, 4 years ago or 3 years ago where I told you, have a look at this Emi Ocon, Chandre Campbell, and these guys.
Yeah.
I think Musa Fumba was one of them. He's just signed for Vizela in the Portuguese second division, so. It'd be interesting to see how some of these guys crack on.
Yeah, and so when you talked about players from Nigeria, Ghana, they have bad leagues, but they somehow
Mm.
develop the best players. I was gonna joke that South Africa is a bit of the opposite, but Chandra
And that's
Campbell,
a fact.
you
It's a
know,
fact.
we're hopefully getting a few exceptions now. Chandra
Hey,
Campbell has moved to Club Brugge, a very highly rated player, as you know, of course. But we're expecting him to do very big things in Belgium. We're not expecting, immediate minutes, first team minutes, but I think it's very exciting, but also a good omen for South African league that major
yeah, I mean,
clubs
look,
are taking the league seriously.
yeah, look, there's been like threatening to get a couple of players in that type of market over the past few years. Maseko was in talks with Westerlo, eventually went to Sundowns. But Campbell is an interesting one. Everybody thought, okay, he's going to go to Sundowns as well. Proper development. He's been at the club from like 12 or even smaller, like even younger, maybe 9 even. He ripped the reserve league, scored 18 goals, couple of assists as well. Player of the season there. Comes into the first team at 17, 18. He does really well. And then obviously attracts a lot of interest. And to see him join Bruges, obviously he's with Club NXT
Yeah.
in the um, Challenger Pro League. I think he's got like 20 minutes of football and he scored an absolute ripper on his debut. But then he came now down for the COSAFA Cup under 20 Cup. So that's why he hasn't been with the league. And he won player of the tournament now, was obviously one of the standout players. South Africa won the tournament without conceding a goal. And obviously qualifying for AFCON under 20. So, many of these players, they're probably not going to play much club football. They're going to go to AFCON and then potentially the under 20 FIFA World Cup. So I mean, it's a good thing. So even if he doesn't crack on at Bruges because of all this, national team football getting in the way, he's putting himself in a window,
Yeah.
and the window that you would know is very important because one could argue that Chandre probably got scouted through CAF Confederations Cup because they played in there as well. So yeah, very interesting prospect, left-footed has an eye for goal, very good at the 10 inside forward. So yeah, he's one that we're hoping is going to be in the senior national team in the not so distant future.
And we hope to see more of these transfers in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple of players around the CAF interclub competitions that will probably be having chats about
In Joliba.
because Joliva. But yeah, no, most of these clubs they are investing into younger players and scouting these talents. You know, some of them are going to fall through the cracks. Not all of them are going to end up at the Red Bull, Salzburg,
Yeah.
Leipzig. What's the other team's name? That had the football manager coach in France. Um,
Rennes.
Reims.
Yeah.
Reims. They're not all going to end up there, if you know what I mean. Or
Yeah.
Anderlecht.
Yeah. It's exciting. We'll see what happens. There's one last transfer we need to talk about. Sundowns spent $3 million on a player from Lommel, the Citigroup club. Can you please enlighten us on what's happened?
Okay, first I want to know your first thoughts when you saw that.
I thought it was a lot of money for a South African club.
Yeah.
I know they have a tradition of signing the South American strikers, but to get someone from Europe who was playing at the fact that he was in Lommel, a Citigroup club, says something about the player already. Obviously, something has to have gone wrong for him to accept the move to South Africa, but I think it's a big risk.
For the player or for
Both,
Sundowns?
both.
No, look, I don't think it's much of a risk for Sundowns. I mean, in the past, they signed the player from Europe, Safranco, for 750,000 euros. They released him the next season. Like they just said, he can go back to Europe. It's fine. They signed a new striker, Lucas Ribeiro Costa from SK Beveren for a significant sum of money as well. Maybe not 3 million euros. And this guy has been absolutely like insane in our league. Like I don't think we've seen a player this good in a while. So I think when they picked up on Sales, I think he scored about I don't know 15, 20 goals in 50 games for Lommel. He also had a loan stint back into Brazil. I think when they saw his profile, they thought like, okay, we're gonna take our team to the next level
Mm,
because Allende, Chile international, they signed from transfer room. They signed Tashrik Matthews from transfer room as well, and Matias Esquivel from Argentina. But he's gone back to Argentina to Lanús, I think
I
Lanús.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, they came second in the league. So yeah, they've. I generally think that they think they're going to take him to the next level, but he hasn't scored yet.
But so what
Um,
is that next level? Even if he does, score at a Shalulile level,
hmm.
you can't sell him for 3 million again. So hopefully, yeah, he can be a good striker for them in the Champions League and in the league. But there's no resale value for a player who's gone to South Africa, right?
One could argue that, but the other argument could be like, okay, one, they don't really care about the money. I mean, they funded by the Motsepe Foundation. Um, Two, we entering perhaps a new stage of football where, you know, African clubs have platforms like AFL. They have platforms like the FIFA Club World Cup where, the valuations of players could potentially be merited. Let's say he goes to this is obviously a big hypothetical because he could end up being a flop as well. You know what I mean? Like he goes to the FIFA Club World Cup and he scores a brace against, I don't know, Real Madrid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And all of a sudden you're like, okay, who's this guy? Reim signs him for 7 million. You know what I
I
mean?
don't know
I'm
about
just,
that.
I know,
Okay.
I'm clutching at straws. I'm just saying
Uh,
hypothetical. But the crux of the matter is the money doesn't really matter to
okay.
Sundowns. But them taking it to the next level is being competitive at the FIFA Club World Cup and
Mm,
trying to win the Champions League. You know what I mean? So Ribeiro has been amazing. Alendi's been amazing. Esquivel, look, it's a basically a revolving door. They sign these players. If they don't work out, toodaloo. Go get a loan back to your country. You can get released.
yeah. Speaking of
It's
South
a big
Americans,
transfer as well.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of South Americans that have been at Sundowns, I was doing some scouting on the American third division, and I noticed that Leonardo Castro formerly of Sundowns and Kaiser Chiefs, is now
Yeah.
languishing in the third tier. One of the better teams. He's scored 6 goals this season at 35 years of age. But
Mighty Greenville.
yes, yes, it's good you remember.
But the
Um,
thing is, like, but when Sundowns were signing those type of players like Castro and whatever, yes, they did really well. But the standard of Castro and the standard of Ribeiro, Marcelo Allende, and Sales, I think, is different gravy because I'm think like you said, this is City group players.
yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see how he gets on. So Salas is only 22 years old, so
Mm.
hopefully some room for improvement. But it will be an interesting one to see. But definitely a very big risk from Sundowns. But it's the type they need to take if they want to actually push on to the next step, like you say. We hope this was a very good episode, first episode for you guys. We hope to continue this and cover, the leagues and stories in African football, local African football that are not covered because we know there's a very big gap in this market. And that's why we started in the first place. So we're excited to get back to it. And yeah, thank you for listening, and please give us any feedback, any questions. But thank you.
Yeah, and guys, if there's anything else you think we or want us to talk about, don't hesitate to let us know. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Cheers.